Hello, everybody, and welcome to Author in the Spotlight, which is our mini series on meeting the authors in the upcoming book all around the theme of grief. And today we are joined by the lovely Rebecca. So, hello, Rebecca, how are you?
Oh, thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Oh, so good to have you. So to start with, do you want to just give us a little introduction about you? So who you are, what you enjoy, what you do, that sort of thing, so as we get to find out a bit.
Lovely. Well, I'm Rebecca and I live in the northeast of England and I love my faith, my family and my friends. And the things that I love to do is I love the seaside, I love the countryside, I love woods and trees and flowers and seeds. And inside, I love fabric and I love crochet.
Wow, amazing, amazing. And do you love the color yellow?
Yes, that sort of landed on me. It wouldn't have been my first choice, but it's sunshine, which I love.
Yeah, amazing, lovely. And so just wondering, what was it that made you want to get involved with this particular book around grief?
Because I liked you. That's the
Okay.
most honest answer.
Okay,
I
thank
did
you.
because I'd seen other people do book collabs before and I've been interested in them. But if I were to be part of something, um, I wanted to do something that was profound, but was sincerely led and with insight and experience. And interestingly, you told me about this, and I had so much on at the time that I thought if I do one more thing, it will be unwise. And then you sent a magical message that said, no, no, it's fine. It's not now. It's sort of 2 or 3 months. And I suddenly thought, I can do 2 or 3 months. So it was so simple. And it was also part of something is I'm very structured. Have to manage my energy very carefully. I have a lot of responsibilities. But the thing that I'm very good at is goals. You know, I have a little planner that I've built myself and I have quarterly goals. And my mentor said to me very delightfully early in the year, Becky, you could ease off the goals a bit. You know, I have goals for health and joy and home and unity and work, but just see what comes along. Now, that felt very disconcerting,
Right.
but you were one of those things that came along, and it was really that simple. Um, so I've had 2 or 3 other things come along, and I've been open to that. So that's been an utter joy. So that's how I came to you, really. And it was a topic about which I knew a huge amount, and I knew a rare amount from a rare corner of experience and education. So I thought not many people have had what I've had, and therefore there's purpose in sharing it. And my whole work and life is about trying to make a loving purpose from immense adversity. And when there's loving purpose, it undermines some of the sadness, the sorrow, the struggle, the suffering, and it uses it for wisdom and hope and blessings. And it allows loving courage to shine. So that's how I got to you, really. I liked you, I liked what you did, and I thought, this just fits beautifully. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being part of it. Your chapter is very powerful. We will get on to that. And yeah, I've said this in a couple of the other interviews, is that, we often face these trials in life, and it's if we can help one person as a result of that, then it makes, for me personally, it makes everything worthwhile. So thank you for coming on board as well. And I'm just wondering, I mean, obviously you are a seasoned author anyway, you can see your beautiful books behind you, but how you found the writing process in this. Oh, I think we got a tech issue. We will just wait a moment. And there she is.
Sorry, the
That's okay.
internet's terrible today. Sorry, I missed that.
That is okay. Tech happens. I was saying, obviously, you are a seasoned author. We can see your beautiful books behind you there on your bookshelf. But how did you find the writing process for this book, and it being your first collaborative book and things like that?
Well, there was something really lovely about having a word limit because when you do your own book, you know, you can run riot. But you offered us excellent guidance, that's the first thing to say, which was very sincere but very professional. And I set aside a Tuesday to do it. And often I find that when I'm really writing from my most sincere experience, it's like dictation. And I can sit down and not really know what's going to come out, but it just comes out. But there are also other times where it's very structured, it's very researched, it's very organised. So I try and find a blend between that sort of intellect and intuition. But the actual process of writing this was a privilege. I would like to say it was a joy, but it was difficult subject matter. And but I also knew when I speak most authentically, I'm most useful. And I've had my soul very stretched. And sometimes there are great lessons from those extremes to bring back to the centre. So the actual process of it is I sat down and I just started and it flew out until my fingers hurt. And then I know I must stop because after 2,500 words, I need to be able to do things with my hands later in the day. So I just decided to write about the things that I have not spoken about or written about. So, I do weekly Facebook Lives. I have an email newsletter. I've written 5 books. There's 2 more coming. I've produced a very solid amount of content, but I had not talked about this. And actually, this is where I probably have the most expertise, which is ironic. But it was a cathartic process, as you often say, and it was part of my mending. And I think we have to work for mending in this world, and we mend ourselves continually, like darning old socks, until there's hardly any sock left. But our souls need care, and this was an exercise in care because it allowed something to come out that had been so dignified and noble and suppressed, but it allowed it to come out in a way that I hope will be helpful for others. But I felt lighter afterwards. And I have had decades of very little peace and huge trauma and huge amounts of illness and restriction on multiple fronts. And when you've had that much restriction, there's a level of seeing everything in life as a privilege and a luxury. And this was part of that process. So first of all, your graceful care around it. It was full of grace and gracious spirit. But also, I just suddenly felt like I'd run. That's how I feel when I'm writing best. I'm either running or I'm flying. And I hope that this is a chapter that's very honest, very raw, but that comes full circle on how to live well, love well, think wisely, be generous of spirit, courageous of heart, but strong in soul. And that there are 2 dualities that can exist in the darkest of circumstances. You can be broken and still very beautiful. You can be very battered by life and still brilliant. And your bravery is what transcends it. So I think your chapter and letting me in your gang has been a blessing to me. And I hope that that will be a blessing to other people.
And that beautifully, yeah, that was beautifully said. And it's sometimes people can underestimate how writing, and because it is painful, it is a painful process, and I am very aware of that, but at the other side you can learn something, and as you said, you it is worth it. I hope. Something.
Yes,
so sorry.
Yeah, and even if it's difficult, it's worth. I'm a great believer in just not calling it a comfort zone, but it's just unfamiliar, and we'll just take the next right move, go gently, be wise, be sensitive, but the consistency nearly always helps us.
Yes.
And that you're often further through difficulty than you realize, and that your own experiences actually can be used to make not only you stronger, but others. But suddenly, I like the thought, there's got to be a lesson here. And in 5 years' time, it might be a great blessing. So I was seeking the blessing of it, but it was much more generative of peace for me than I could have believed. And it took a load out of my backpack. That's really what it was. It took a great concrete pillar off my shoulders. So I'm very grateful for that.
And that's lovely. And I am so pleased that it helped as a stepping stone in your journey. That's
Yes.
amazing. And so do you want to share a little bit about what your chapter is about, without giving too much away, but just so as people know what it is that you talk about in this book?
Well, my title is Grace in Grief, and I love the thought of grace, and I love joy, and I love wisdom. And they're all the top end of the tapestry of life, aren't they? They're the golden threads. But underneath is the courage, the resilience, and the fortitude to keep going when life is very unfair and very difficult. So all of the work that I do now is Lifejoy, And Lifejoy stands for love, integrity, fortitude, energy, joy, order, and you. And all of that was born because I was unemployable after 20 years of severe.
Lost you again.
Sorry, darling.
That's okay.
I'm trying.
That's okay.
Lovely.
That's fine.
So, shall I just
Yeah.
answer from now?
Yes, yeah, you got to
It's
20
starting.
years. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So
So I had 20 years of very severe ME. Every aspect of my life, in many respects, was ruined, and I had done everything right. So if you just looked at what had happened to me, glandular fever at 17, uh, every decision I've made, and I'm now 51, has been predicated on that level of illness. If you just looked at what happened to me within our family unit, that would have been enough. But my father has been very severely ill since he was 37, and my mother got early onset dementia in her 50s with psychosis and epilepsy. That is a lot for a small unit. And I've chased health. I've longed for it. Like I can hardly describe. And to see the suffering that my parents have endured puts mine into perspective. Mine was difficult. You know, I've never been on a plane. I've never been drunk. I haven't had a child. There are huge restrictions in my life, but I've had improvement. I could still be bedridden. So I thank God for that so wholeheartedly. But the torture my parents have endured, especially my mother, has been beyond comprehension. And I am actually, the thing I do most of all now is one-to-one life coaching and counselling for coping strategies for enduring difficulty. Because the astonishing thing is I've just had so much of it for so long and so much difficulty, but unrelenting degeneration. And the point of all of that is there were great lessons in that. And those lessons are only useful if they're shared. Now, I did not want to be embittered. I did not want to be negative. I desperately didn't want to be self-piteous. So joyful resilience and wise courage were my tools. And you can still have happy hours in dreadful days. You can still have moments of deep joy and appreciation when your life is falling apart. But you do need to manage your thinking, your mind, and what you can control. But you can't often control very much. So the level of suffering I've seen, I would not wish on anybody. If you put all of that together, I then decided what I would write my chapter on. And as a side note to that, you know, I write books and I help people find their joy. It's that simple. Burnout to balance and blessings. All of that has come from all of that illness. But I worked for a decade, and going to work was a monumental achievement, nearly as much as having a dog. But I didn't go to work till I was 36, and even then it was very slow and small. And being unemployable is a very difficult road, especially when you've been a clever, hardworking girl. You know, I say that with humility, but by heavens, the extremes in my life have been very odd. So I set about writing that chapter because I had worked as a Christian celebrant, and I have taken over 1,000 loving funeral services. And the reason I did that was because I knew what it was to suffer and struggle. And I've looked after the most remarkable people. I've been humbled beyond measure about what humanity can endure. But the three great lessons of 1,000 funeral services was just how much people love each other. That's what I kept seeing. How brave people are. People have no idea how courageous they are until I can tell them. It's wonderful. I've stood up and I've said, you are a marvellous family. I love you. Please adopt me. And, you know, we've had laughter in churches and crematoriums. But once people see their own courage, they're astounding. And thirdly, how resourceful people are. Now, that doesn't mean people don't behave well or any of the drama or shenanigans or disappointing behaviours or malevolencies in this world. But I saw very close hand the depth of humanity that's in all of us. I've seen it in 96-year-old widows, and I've seen it in 16-year-old unmarried mothers who've lost their little child. So once you have that connecting force, if you could see what I've seen, it would give you such hope. There's the point. It would break your heart, but it would make you see the immense privilege it is to be here. The immense privilege is to just breathe comfortably, swallow, go to the shower, live a normal half life. is still something 1,000 people would swap with, 1,000,000 people would swap with wherever you are. So I started to write that chapter from the most fundamental sentence of all of my being. And my first sentence was, I took my mother's funeral. And when you've done that, and you've taken a 17-year-old's funeral, and you've taken a 102-year-old, and everything in between, you have a unique perspective. So I wrote that sentence, and I didn't cry, but I could hardly breathe. Because she had had so much restriction in normal life with two of us very sick in the house. And then she got sick, and she was my age when she was ill. And the catastrophic suffering she had, no diagnosis, no treatment, no support. We had a very bad end of it medically. And then we would have angelic bits of help too. So 14 years of mental and physical decline until she was 3 stone in a bed. She could not walk, talk, see, hear, function, and she had epilepsy. And I cannot tell you, if people have quick and easy ends compared to that torture, look at it in that way. So I wrote that chapter. I think the first 2 or 3 paragraphs are hard to read. But then, and I love the thought of and yet, I tried to take the lessons of 1,000 funerals and all that life gives us and help us to live well. Because knowing all of that, the first thing that death should teach us is how to live, how to love, how to be the best that we can be, how to keep going when we don't believe we can keep going. So I wrote that. So the whole thing comes full circle. And I talk a lot about anticipatory grief when you know the trouble is coming, but also about trying to be the best in the moment. But also, we had some ridiculous things happen to us, which were still funny. They're funny now, and somehow we survived. But I wanted to survive stronger, firmer, more faithful, wiser. And also that I could reach a hand out to the client behind me, the friend behind me, the funeral behind me, and say, I've got hold of you. I'll do my best. I'll love you as if you were mine. And that's what that chapter's about.
And yeah, that, as you can tell, it's a very powerful chapter. And I think that you have, there is nothing that I need to add to, how powerful and how moving it is. And obviously the nature of the book is that, we are all sharing very moving stories. And yeah, I just love how you said it goes full circle and you still found the positives in that. It is very, very powerful. So thank you for being part of the book and for sharing that story. And as you said, it isn't something you shared, and I know this is something that other authors have found as well. It's that vulnerability, but it's sharing and showing that vulnerability in the hope that it will help someone, in their journey.
And our whole life is to grow and to give, I think. And when you can use adversity to do that, it's served its purpose.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that I live in a state of euphoric happiness all the time. And there's a quiet dread in me because I know what can come in life. But there's also, I want to come to that with a deeper surprise and appreciation. So I'm still thrilled I can go in the shower. Every time I go to the shower, I'm like, I'll go in the shower, Yes. I'm still delighted when my garden table has people around it and we're giggling. Or my godson tells us a stupid story and we're it's so ridiculously joyous. Or that I see people for whom I've taken services and they're happy again. Yeah. I see them 18 months down the line. I see them 5 years down the line and they've mended a good chunk. They're never restored, but they're stronger. And it's almost like I wish somebody had told me this. If I'd had this, I could have coped better. So it's really, I'm a big fan of you did cope, you will cope, and you are coping. But somehow this offering of your lovely book and all the good people who are in it, there's a handbook of managing your life, I think.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And it's again, it's sharing those experiences and that you do somehow get through. even when you,
Yes.
even in those moments, you do. And so it's to the aim of the book is to try and provide, even if it's a glimmer or a pin drop of a bit of light in someone's darkness, then that is the aim of this. So again, thank you for being involved. And obviously, if people resonate with your chapter, or they want to reach out to you, your link tree will be with the interview when it goes out. But is there somewhere, do you tend to be in more than one place, do you tend to be in one place more than others, that if people wanted to connect with you they could go to?
Well, I'd always love to hear from anybody. That's the first thing. And always wish to help. I have a lovely Facebook group called Lifejoy Learning with Dr. Rebecca. Come and find us there. But I also have an email newsletter on my website, which is drrebecca.org.uk. And every other week, the dog writes the email. And my mum would have loved that so much. She would have been so entertained because she had a lovely sense of humour. And the last part of that chapter is that I tell you her name. When we speak her name, she goes on. And that she was funny and clever and loyal and ridiculous fun. And always had a piano in her classroom and championed the lost lambs. And she used to say, when she saw nastiness going on, she'd stride across the classroom and say, I'm not having this. And I used to think, don't we all need somebody in life who will say on our behalf, I am not having this? So I want
Yes.
to take her forward with me, my little
Yeah.
mummy. So she is, the chapter's for her, but it's also for my bravest dad and my loveliest husband.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. And thank you so much for your time today and your words of wisdom. It's been amazing having you here. And so just as we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to add before we bid farewell?
I think if people can see their own goodness, that's a huge step forward in life. And whether you can fulfill some potential or all of it, you're doing much better than you think. And that your worth is beyond measure. And even when you're very broken and very worn, you are still fearfully and wonderfully made.
Amazing. Perfectly put. And on that note, we will draw to a close. So thank you so much, Rebecca. Please do join us again for another author in the spotlight very soon. But for now, we'll say goodbye. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. God bless.
Bye.